Hare Krishna. Today we are focusing on uh, second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, text 21 to 30. Text 21. O Partha, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Purport. Everything has its proper utility, and a man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence also has its utility, and how to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge. Although the justice of the peace awards capital punishment to a person condemned for murder, the justice of the peace cannot be blamed because he orders violence to another person according to the codes of justice. In the Manu Samhita, the logbook for mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death so that in his next life he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. Therefore, the king's punishment of hanging the murderer is actually beneficial. Similarly, when Krishna orders fighting, it must be concluded that violence is for supreme justice, and thus Arjuna should follow the instruction. Knowing well that such violence committed in the act of fighting for Krishna is not violence at all, because at any rate the man, or rather the soul, cannot be killed. So, for the administration of justice, the so called violence is permitted. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient but to cure him. Therefore, the fighting to be executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge, so there is no possibility of sinful reaction. Herein we are learning a very beautiful lesson. Srila Prabhupada here gives the case study of violence to explain that any particular activity has its proper utility and improper utility. A person in knowledge, whatever he touches on, is going to have a positive and constructive effect. Is going to have a positive and constructive effect. So therefore, this violence which the Supreme Lord is asking Arjuna is like a surgical operation. This surgical operation is precisely removing the viruses which are this surgical operation is precisely removing the viruses which are creating havoc in the world. So when the Lord annihilates the Dharmivadis, then that's like a surgical operation. And now, if one knows the knowledge of the soul, then one can understand that the Lord is not annihilating also. Even for the demoniac people, the Lord is just performing a surgery. Because with the Lord's intervention, their future destination is going to be auspicious. So that is why this instruction which the Lord is giving to Arjuna is all auspicious for everyone. With respect to the innocent and the pious, the annihilation of the demons is a surgery. So it is beneficial for them. With respect to the demons, their annihilation is actually purifying their demoniac mentality, and every one of them is going to land up in a better destination. And this is what happened with all the participants of the Kurukshetra battle. All of them by default got liberation, and those who could see Krishna while dying, they got the destination as a spiritual world. So this is a surgery. That's why Prabhupada is giving the example of surgery. The surgery is meant to save a person, and therefore one who is having knowledge can actually administer anything into an auspicious utility. Now this is a beautiful lesson for us, because the lesson is that the mundane ground, that is the material ground or the plane of ignorance, is all destructive for anyone and everyone involved in it, is all inauspicious for everyone and anyone involved in it. But the beauty is that the spiritual ground, the spiritual plane, is all auspicious for anyone and everyone involved in it. Because the definition, one of the definitions, or one of the barometers which answers the question whether we are spiritual or not, is whether we are clinging on to the guidance available in the parampara or not. So when we are clinging on to the guidance of the senior devotees available coming down from the parampara, that is a barometer or the ensuring factor that we are spiritual. So that fulfills the prerequisite which Prabhupada is speaking in the purport. That one who is following, so we are spiritual means we are taking guidance, and we are following the guidance means that under expert guidance. And expert guidance, that means everything will have its proper utility, so everything is auspicious. So if everything is auspicious, then therefore the point which comes is that, the beautiful point which comes is that, therefore when it comes to spiritual life, there is no need to bring in material calculations and evaluations and considerations and justifications and judgments. So material matrix is not at all required to be applied when it comes to spiritual grounds, because spiritual grounds are auspicious, and one brings in material matrix which are incomplete, and thereby they may not be able to analyze the spiritual grounds properly. Those material matrix are going to prove to be a hindrance or blockage in the life of a sadhaka in receiving the great mercy which is already there for the sadhaka. One just has to accept and practice. That's the point. So many times as practicing sadhakas, we mix material matrix into spiritual, we mix these material matrix into on the spiritual grounds. And that matrix makes the whole scene quite hazy. This is one of the reasons why Arjuna was chastised or chided, not heavily chastised, but chided or reprimanded mildly by the Supreme Lord. Why? Because understanding that the mission is the very mission of the Lord, understanding that this is a service, understanding that this is for the benefit of humanity, understanding that Krishna is personally present, understanding that Krishna has given enough signal that that is his desire, still why there is hesitation. And therefore the Lord was telling, Anare Jushtam Asvargyam. This is not becoming an intelligent man. This hesitation is going to bring akirti, defamation, in glorious, because this hesitation, this doubt is becoming a blockage on the path of one, on the path of a sadhaka who is just about to receive auspiciousness just by following the instructions. Just by following the instructions. Let's read further. Text 22, Vasamsa Jirnani. As a person puts on new garments, giving up the old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Change of body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even the modern scientists who do not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart, have to accept continuous changes of the body which appear from childhood to boyhood, boyhood to youth, and again from youth to old age. From old age, the change is transferred to the next body, another body. This has already been explained in the previous verse, that is 213. Transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the supersoul. The supersoul fulfills the desire of the atomic soul as one friend fulfills the desire of another. The Vedas, like the Mundaka Upanishad as well as the Shvetashvatara Upanishad, compare the soul and the supersoul to be two friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the birds, the individual atomic soul, is eating the fruit of the tree, and the other bird, that is Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Of these two birds, although they are same in quality, one is captivated by the fruits of the material tree, and the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. Krishna is a witnessing bird. Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master, the other is still the servant. Forgetfulness of this relationship by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing position from one tree to another, from one body to another. The Jiva soul is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body, but as soon as he agrees to accept the other bird as a supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender unto Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. Both the Mundaka Upanishad and the Shvetashvatara Upanishad confirm this. Samane vriksha purusho nikamo nimango nimagno nishaya sochati muhyamana yushtam yada pashyati anyam aisham asya mahimanam iti vida shoka. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or the other he turns his face to his friend, the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxieties. Arjuna has now turned his face towards his eternal friend Krishna and is understanding Bhagavad Gita from him. And thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glories of the Lord and be free from lamentation. Arjuna is advised herewith by the Lord not to lament for the bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in the righteous fight, so that they may be cleansed at once of all the reactions from various bodily activities. One who lays down his life at the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reactions and promoted to higher status of life. So there was no cause for Arjuna's lamentation. The Lord is explaining everything in this material world has two aspects associated with it. Both of these aspects are occurring concomitantly. Simultaneously they are occurring. So the constant fabric or the phenomena of this world is change. Everything in this world is changing. Change is a constant phenomena. The only constant in this world is change. So now when we talk about change, change means something new is coming in and something old is going out. So now both these phenomena are occurring parallelly. Something old is getting is getting washed off, getting destroyed, and something new is blossoming. Now, who is happy and who is miserable? Now, upon being subjected to the change. So, a person who zooms on the old being destroyed is absolutely miserable, whereas a person who zooms on the new being manifesting and blossoming is ecstatic. So, in this material world, happiness and misery very much depends upon what do we see. Do we see the old being washed away, or do we see the new being coming in? What do we focus on? Is becomes or decides what do we experience. So the uh, now we may say, okay, it also very much depends upon that, okay, what was the quality of the old what we had, and what is the quality of the new what we are getting. All our indices will be focused on that. Uh, suppose one is working, say, in a company, and the present company is suppose giving a notice of firing to the person, but before he got the notice, he's already got another job. So something old is being taken away, and something new is coming in. This is both these things are happening. Now, what do we zoom on? But we may also say that, okay, it very much depends on what was the old salary and what is the new salary. The old salary is 20 lakh, new salary is 10 lakhs. It will be a cause of misery. Shoka. But if the old salary is 20, now everyone is getting 24. It is jubilation. Is it not? So, uh, this is the point. Now, in material, so you see, material consciousness, whichever side one zooms on, one is not going to get much benefit. Why? Because the old is getting worn out and getting destroyed. That is the that is the that's the eternal that's the impeccable phenomena. But in material consciousness, because one is ignorant, one is blind, and one only perceives darkness, what is coming in is absolutely uncertain, and what was existing is going away. Therefore, people in material consciousness are most miserable. Because they don't know what's coming in, but what is going back, at least it was giving something. At least they know what it was. At least it was giving something. So therefore, change is a very miserable phenomena when it comes to material consciousness, because what is coming in is absolutely uncertain. It very much depends on the person's karma. So uh, therefore, when one sees with spiritual vision, now one adds spiritual vision, and one is practicing spiritual life, then one will understand. Then one has, then this understanding is very clear that what is going away, whatever it was that is going away, but what is coming in is all very auspicious, because the ground is spiritual. So this becomes a perfect phenomena for a devotee to be always happy, because what is coming in is spiritual. And this is what Srila Prabhupada is pointing out, that this is what Lord Krishna is telling Arjuna. That the generals in the battlefield are going to leave their present body, but they will get a new body. And because this is Dharma Yuddha, because the Lord was himself present, they are going to get a better destination. So there is no cause for lamentation. That is the point. And that's why Prabhupada, when he's quoting this analogy of Mundaka Upanishad and Sitashatara Upanishad, the two friendly birds. So the bird who is eating the fruit is in anxiety. Why? Because the bird doesn't just know what taste it's going to get. So therefore this bird is in anxiety. But the friend bird is always ready to facilitate. So if the Jiva bird turns to the friend bird, that is the super soul, then there is no uncertainty of the happening. Then it is certain that whatever will happen will be auspicious. So the process of Sharnagati has started. And then that becomes a very welcome phenomenon. So for a devotee, there is no stage where a devotee should sit down and cry, because one should understand that what is coming in a devotee's life is going to be very auspicious because he is practicing devotional service. So the heart will be cleansed and the future is going to be more and more bright. So therefore the Lord, in explaining or giving answers to this case study for Arjuna, the Lord is telling, therefore, do not hesitate and just fight, because the future will be bright. Let's read further. The soul can never be cut into pieces by any weapon, nor burned by fire, nor moistened by water, nor withered by the wind. All the kinds of weapons, sword, flame weapons, rain weapons, tornado weapons, are unable to kill the spirit soul. It appears that there were many kinds of weapons made of earth, water, air, ether, etc., in addition to the modern weapons of fire. Even the nuclear weapons of the modern age are classified as fire weapons, or formerly there were other weapons made up of different types of metal elements. Fire weapons are counteracted by water weapons, which are now unknown to modern science. Nor do modern scientists have knowledge of tornado weapons. Nonetheless, the soul can never be cut into pieces, nor annihilated by any number of weapons, regardless of scientific devices. Now, the Mayavadi cannot explain how the individual soul came into existence simply by ignorance and consequently became covered by the illusory energy. Nor was it ever possible to cut the individual souls from the original Supreme Soul. Rather, the individual souls are eternally separated parts of the Supreme Soul. So, because they are atomic individual souls eternally, that is Sanatana, they are prone to be covered by the illusory energy. And thus they become separated from the association of the Supreme Lord. Just as sparks of the fire, although one in quality with the fire, are prone to be extinguished when out of fire. In the Varaha Puran, the living entities are described as separated parts and parcels of the Supreme. They are eternally so, according to the Bhagavad Gita also. So, even after being liberated from illusion, the living entity remains a separate identity, as it is evident from the teachings of the Lord to Arjuna. Arjuna became liberated by the knowledge received from Krishna, but he never became one with Krishna. The Lord explains how no material situations and adjustments and juxtapositions can affect the spirit soul. The material body and the mind, because it is also material, hmm. So here in the characteristics of the soul are being described. Now, uh, this is quite interesting. As we read through these characteristics of the soul, we can clearly understand that you see, these characteristics actually are further reiterating the fact that material heuristics does not apply in the case of the soul only. Prabhupada is describing, okay, fire weapons can be counteracted by water weapons. But here it is being described that the spirit soul uh, is not affected by these material factors. Is not affected by these material factors. So this is a further demonstration of the fact of the point uh, which we were touching upon, that actually the material calculations, material heuristics are not required when it comes to a spiritual instruction, because spiritual plane is not at all affected, not at all affected. Neither it is cut into pieces by any weapon, nor it is burned by fire, nor it is washed by water, nor it is withered by the wind. So material impact, so matter only impacts matter, and therefore one particular matter can counteract another matter, but nothing impacts the soul. Nothing impacts the soul, and that's such a beautiful revelation, because this proves to us uh, that the soul is beyond the material calculations. Achedyoyam adayoyam. This is 24. Akledyo shosheva cha nityam sarvagatah sthanur achaloyam sanatanaha. The individual soul is unbreakable and insoluble and can neither be burnt nor dried. He is everlasting, present everywhere, unchanging, immovable, and eternally the same. All these qualifications of the atomic soul definitely prove that the individual soul is eternally the atomic particle of the spirit soul, the spirit whole, and he remains the same atom eternally without change. The theory of monism is very difficult to apply in this case because the individual soul is never expected to become one homogeneously. After liberation from material contamination, the atomic soul may prefer to remain as a spirit spark in the effulgent rays of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But the intelligent souls enter into spiritual planets to associate with the Personality of Godhead. Now, the word Sarvagataha, all pervading, is significant because there is no doubt that the living entities are all over the God's creation. They live on the land, in the water, in the air, within the earth, and even within fire. The belief that they are sterilized by fire is not acceptable because it is clearly stated here the soul cannot be burnt by fire. There is no doubt that there are living entities also in the sun planet with suitable bodies to live there. If the sun globe is uninhabited, then the word Sarvagataha, living everywhere, becomes meaningless. Yeah, meaningless. So, so here we understand, you see, the individual soul is eternal and its intrinsic characteristic is eternally there, and that doesn't change. What changes is the individual soul's notion about itself. And when this notion is improper or this notion is illusory, then the drive of the individual soul, the jiva soul, it becomes the drive of the jiva soul is not much constructive. So the position of the jiva soul is not changing, but the illusion of the notion of who he is changing. So the notion becomes illusory, then the activities become waste or degrading. Because the notion is illusory. So therefore we will see that Krishna is so merciful. He always preserves the position of the jiva soul, so much so that whenever the jiva soul comes to some sadbuddhi, he can still start serving Krishna. That's the point. So the jiva soul gets some sadbuddhi that one can himself Okay, there is a question. Does anyone who will be fighting in a war where one party is fighting for right cause and the other for fulfilling the selfish desire? Yeah, so here is being asked that okay, one party is fighting for the right cause, other is fighting for the selfish desire. So one who is fighting for the right cause will he get a higher destination or not? Hmm. So generally, in this kind of a scenario, actually, it is the consciousness of the person who's fighting for the right cause that will prevail. Just like sometimes we see, it is the consciousness of the person, because the the person who's fighting for the right cause, the devotee of the Lord, his consciousness will percolate. His consciousness is percolate, provided he remains fixed in his practices. So yes, this goes to show. See, this is very hope giving, because this goes to show that if one jiva stands up to resurrect himself, that itself can create auspiciousness for the people around. Is it not wonderful? Is it not so wonderful and amazing that it creates for everybody involved around? It creates auspiciousness. Text 25. It is said that the soul is invisible, inconceivable, and immutable. Knowing this, you should not grieve for the body. As described previously, the magnitude of the soul is so small for our material calculation that he cannot even be seen even by the most powerful microscope. Therefore, he is invisible. As far as the soul's existence is concerned, no one can establish his existence experimentally beyond the proof of Shruti or the Vedic civilization, Vedic wisdom. We have to accept this truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul. Hmm. We have to accept this truth because there is no other source of understanding the existence of the soul, although it is a fact of perception, and it is a fact by perception. There are many things we have to accept solely on the ground of superior authority. No one can deny the existence of his father based on the authority of his mother. There is no source of understanding the identity of the father except by the authority of the mother. Similarly, there is no source of understanding the soul except by studying the Vedas. In other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experiential knowledge. The soul is consciousness and unconscious. Hare Krishna. So, in other words, the soul is inconceivable by human experiential knowledge. The soul is consciousness and conscious. That is also the statement of the Vedas, and we have to accept that. Unlike the body changes, there is no changes for the soul. As eternally unchangeable, the soul remains atomic in comparison to the Supreme Soul. As the Supreme Soul is infinite and the atomic soul is infinitesimal. Therefore, the infinitesimal soul, being unchangeable, can never become equal to the infinite soul of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This concept is repeated in the Vedas in different ways just to bring stability to the conception of the soul. Repetition of something is necessary in order that we understand the matter thoroughly without error. Accepting the superior authority is not blind, because when one accepts things from superior authority, everything becomes auspicious. Text 26. If, however, you think that the soul or the symptoms of life will always be born and die forever, you still have no reason to lament, O mighty Am. See, there is a class of philosophers who, almost akin to Buddhists, who do not believe in the separate existence of the soul beyond the body. When Lord Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita, it appears that such philosophers existed, and Lokayatikas and Vibhayashikas. Such philosophers maintain that the life symptoms take place at a certain mature condition of material combination. The modern material scientists and material philosophers also think similarly. According to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage, the life symptoms develop by the interaction of physical and chemical elements. Hmm. So, according to them, the body is a combination of physical elements, and at a certain stage, the life symptoms develop by interaction of the physical and chemical elements. The science of anthropology is based on this philosophy. Currently, many pseudo religions, now becoming fashionable in America, are also adherents of this philosophy, and they are nihilistic, non devotional Buddhist sects. If Arjuna did not believe in the existence of the soul, as in the Vaibhashika philosophy, there would still have been no cause for lamentation. No one laments the loss of a certain bulk of chemicals. According to the Vaibhashika philosophy, the so-called soul or Atma vanishes along with the deterioration of the body. So in any case, whether Arjuna accepted the Vedic conclusion that there is an atomic soul and he did not believe in the existence of God, existence of the soul, he had no reason to lament. According to this theory, since there were many living entities generating out of matter every moment, and so many of them are being vanquished every moment, there is no need to grieve for such instances. If there were no rebirth for the soul, Arjuna had no reason to be afraid of being affected by sinful reactions due to his killing the grandfather and teacher. But at the same time, Krishna sarcastically addressed Arjuna as Mahabahu, mighty arm, because he at least did not accept the theory of the Vaibhashikas, which leaves aside the Vedic wisdom. As a Kshatriya, Arjuna belonged to the Vedic culture, and it behooved him to continue to follow its principles. So herein we are learning that actually, just like when we study the nature of the soul, the spirit soul, actually we have to understand the that because the spirit soul is like that. Uh, So just like the soul is not affected by material factors, we will see that this principle applies to the interaction or the plane of interaction and activity to the soul also. So this means that one who is adherent of the Bhakti Yoga, because one is acting on the spiritual platform, one can become aloof. One can become aloof from the entanglements of this world. The limitations of this world, where one can become unaffected. This is because of one's spiritual practice. This is because of one's spiritual practice. One does become aloof. So in this way, we can see that in this way we can see that material factors always have a kind of a gravitational pull which pulls everyone towards degradation. Now, the idea of getting rid of this itself is a very beautiful idea. But how to bring it about? That is the point. So it is these practices of Navida Bhakti which actually bring us to this platform, that one is not affected by material situations. The material crescent troughs do not create a cleavage in a devotee's life, does not create, do not explode a devotee's life. One is unaffected, and this unaffecting is coming because of uh, so that much Shakti we get. So that is why so in this way we can say that these our spiritual practices and Avida Bhakti, they actually lift us up and lift us out of the gravitational of material affairs, which is degrading in its very fabric. And that's the point. Let's read text 27. One who has taken his birth is sure to die, and after death one is sure to take birth again. Therefore, in the unavoidable discharge of your duty, You should not lament. One has to take birth according to one's activities in life, and after finishing one term of activities, one has to die to take birth for the next. In this way, one is going through one cycle of birth and death after another without liberation. This cycle of birth and death does not, however, support unnecessary murder, slaughter, and war, but at the same time, violence and war are inevitable factors in human society for keeping law and order. See, the battlefield of Kurukshetra, being the will of the Supreme, was an inevitable event, and to fight for the right cause is the duty of a Kshatriya. Why should then he be afraid or aggrieved at the death of his relatives since he was discharging his proper duty? He did not deserve to break the law, thereby becoming subjected to the reactions of sinful acts of which he was so afraid. By avoiding the discharge of his proper duty, he would not be able to stop the death of his relatives, and he would be degraded due to his selection of the wrong path of action. Hmm. So all these revelations are pointing out to that irrevocable fact that investment in the material plane is futile, and investment on the spiritual plane is everlasting and all glorious. When the Lord explains here, see, what is somebody is born is sure to die. That means just striving for upkeep and comfort at the bodily plane is useless. Because anyways the body will not remain for a long time. Now it means okay, but for the time being the body is a vehicle by which we can serve Krishna. Yes, that is very true. But the other clause is also true. That if this, when this instrument is destroyed, another instrument we are going to get. So there is nothing to lament then. There is nothing to lament. So one particular instrument is destroyed, one is going to get another instrument. And especially when one is a practicing sadhaka, his instruments are going to be more and more holistic and better. Let's read text 28. All created beings are unmanifest in their beginning, manifest in the interim state, and unmanifest again when annihilated. So, what need is there for lamentation? Accepting that there are two kinds of philosophers, one believing in the existence of soul and the other not believing in the existence of the soul, there is no cause of lamentation in either case. Non-believers in the existence of the soul are called atheists by the followers of Vedic wisdom. Yet, even if for the argument's sake we accept the atheist's authority, there is still no cause for lamentation. Apart from the separate existence of the soul, the material elements remain unmanifested before the creation. From this subtle state of non manifestation comes manifestation, just as from ether, air. Just as from ether, air is generated, air, fire is generated, from fire, water is generated, water, earth is generated. From the earth, many varieties of manifestations take place. Take, for example, a big skyscraper manifested from the earth. When it is dismantled, the manifestation again becomes unmanifested and remains at atoms in the ultimate stage. The law of conservation of energy remains, but in course of time, things are manifested and unmanifested. That is the difference. The law of conservation of energy remains, but in the course of time, things are manifest and unmanifested. So, then what cause is there for lamentation either in the stage of manifestation or unmanifest? Somehow or the other, even in the unmanifested stage, things are not lost. Both in the beginning and at the end, all the elements remain unmanifested, and only in the middle are they manifested. And this does not make any real material difference. And if we accept the Vedic conclusion as stated in Bhagavad Gita that these material bodies are perishable in due course of time and then the soul is eternal, then we must remember always that body is like a dress. Therefore, why lament the changing of a dress? The material body has no factual existence in relation to the eternal soul. Now, it is something like a dream. In a dream, we may think of flying in the sky or sitting on a chariot as a king. But when we wake up, we can see that we are neither in the sky nor seated on the chariot. The Vedic wisdom encourages self-realization on the basis of the non-existence of the material body. Therefore, in either case, whether one believes in the existence of the soul whether one believes in the existence of soul or one does not believe in the existence of soul, there is no cause of lamentation for the loss of the body. Prabhupada is explaining here how the material body is like a dream. Oh, in a dream, one may be having any kind of, one may be a bird, an animal. It is not of much weightage. Similarly, our this present body is just like a dream. It's temporary. It will not be there. So whatever morphology the body occupies, we have to understand it is temporary. Manifest, unmanifest. So this series of manifestation and unmanifestation, that is the very way in which the affairs of this world take place. So this is a very beautiful concept. The soul is, so this concept soul talks about the eternity of the Jiva Shakti. The Jiva Shakti is manifest, is taking body, unmanifest, manifest, unmanifest. That's the point. So in the same way we can understand soul is eternal. So manifest, unmanifest is taking place. But we see everything about bhakti is also like that. Just like it is said when we say Krishna consciousness is eternal bank account. So whatever bhakti one does is there. When one changes the body, it becomes unmanifest. And then it becomes unmanifest in and takes its root or storage in the new life. And therefore, as soon as now in the see Acharya has explained that when one comes to new life, immediately right from birth, one may not be a devotee. One has to still get a trigger from another Vaishnava. That may happen. So when that happens, then again it becomes manifest. So Krishna calls eternal bank account. That's the point. And this is a warning for us also, because the warning is if one performs negative activities, that also remains. One has to pay for it sooner or later. And therefore, one should be absolutely responsible, understanding that here we are in this plane where nothing is destroyed. Nothing is destroyed. Everything remains. Everything remains. So, what is the cause for lamentation? Yeah. So, this same principle, that the understanding of this principle can act in these twofold ways. One, it cuts down lamentation. It is a very hope giving principle. What is the cause for lamentation? Nothing is going to be destroyed. What is the cause for lamentation? What is the cause for lamentation? So this principle is a hope giving principle, because we may see sometimes the Krishna is always merciful towards the living entity, and the Lord always wants the benefit and the welfare of the living entity. But the welfare of the living entity, or the benefit of the living entity may not be manifest always. So when one is passing through an unmanifested state, one should always remember that the Lord's mercy is eternal. It may not be manifest for the time being, but it is not gone. in due course of time, every sadhaka can realize the mercy of the Supreme Lord. That is the point. So, what is auspicious, what is beneficial may not always be in the manifested state, but this world is like that: manifest, unmanifest, manifest. So, when we are traversing an unmanifested state, one just needs to have that patience and hold on with that faith to the lotus feet of the Lord. Because it is unmanifest, very soon it becomes manifest. That's the point. So it's hope giving. Hope giving. So this is quite hope giving. And the other thing is that and the other thing which one may understand is, or the other thing is that from this we can also learn, this verse also cuts off all kinds of states of illusion. Why? Because you see, so all kinds of states of illusion, because we are seeing here that the all kinds of states of illusion. Why it cuts off all kinds? So why the whole point is that why should I so the whole point is that one is going through a stage in which, say, the positive results or auspicious is not manifest. That doesn't mean it is lost forever. So why should we accept illusion? Why should we accept illusion? So this goes to show that, you see, the spiritual is always superior to the material energy. But when the spiritual and the material are mixed together, the effects of the spiritual energy are manifest, becomes unmanifest, again and manifest. That means the material energy at best can cloud for some time. And when the material energy creates a cloud, we should just chant the holy name out loud. And that's it. So yes, in dealings with material energy, one should be careful. There is no doubt about that. If too much one fluffs around in material energy, then the clouding is quite intense. So there is a science of touching the material energy very carefully. So and there is a science to just touch and push it towards the Lord, so it becomes non-toxic, so it becomes non-poisonous, so it becomes non-overwhelming material energy. It gets spiritualized. So that's the way of dealing with the material energy. But the point is that the material energy does create a cloud. So therefore, because time and again this cloud is there, so therefore when things are not evident and clear, that doesn't mean the process is not working. Sadhaka should understand, I have just become a bit clouded at this point of time. And therefore, on that stage, one has to hold on his faith. But not reconciliate with illusion. That why should I reconciliate with illusion? Okay, it's a bit clouded, it's a bit not clear what things are, what shape, what way, shape and turn the things are changing. But Krishna consciousness is the higher edge, is the upper edge. And that is why for a sadhaka it is always recommended to always be to always depend on the association of the devotees, because temporarily we may get clouded, but when we are in the association, very easily we can get the strength to overcome it. Just like we see in the fourth canto of Bhagavatam, Dhruv Maharaj got clouded. But as soon as he heard from the devotees, immediately came back to his consciousness actually. And therefore you see, there is no cause. One should neither embrace lamentation and anxiety, nor one should embrace an illusory lifestyle or illusion. Text 29. Some look on the soul as amazing, some describe him as amazing, some hear of him as amazing, while others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. Since Gita Upanishad is largely based on the principles of the Upanishad, it is not surprising to find this passage in the Katha Upanishad. So the fact is that the atomic soul is within the body of a gigantic animal, in the body of a gigantic banyan tree, and also in microbic germs, millions and billions of which occupy only an inch of space, is certainly very amazing. Men with a poor fund of knowledge and men who are not austere cannot understand the wonders of the individual atomic spark of spirit, even though it is explained by the greatest authority of knowledge, who imparted lessons even to Brahma, the first living being in the universe. Owing to a gross material conception of things, most men in this age cannot imagine how such a small particle can become both so great and so small. So men look at the soul proper as wonderful, either by constitution or by description. Illusioned by the material energy, people are so engrossed in subject matters for sense gratification that they have very little time to understand the question of self understanding. Even though it is a fact that without this self understanding, all activities result in ultimate defeat in the struggle for existence. Perhaps they have no idea that one must think of the soul and thus make a solution to material miseries. Some people who are inclined to hear about the soul may be attending lectures in good association. But sometimes, owing to ignorance, they are misguided by acceptance of the Supreme Soul and the atomic soul as one without distinction of magnitude. It is very difficult to find a man who properly understands the position of the super soul, the atomic soul, their respective functions, their relationships, and all other major and minor details. And it is still more difficult to find a man who has actually derived benefit from the knowledge of the soul and who is able to describe the position of the soul in different aspects. But if somehow or the other one is able to understand the subject matter of the soul, then one's life is successful. The easiest process for understanding the subject matter of the self is to accept the statements of Bhagavad Gita spoken by the greatest authority, Lord Krishna, without being deviated by other theories. But it also requires a great deal of penance and sacrifice, either in this life or in the previous ones, before one is able to accept Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Krishna can, however, be known as such by the causeless mercy of the pure devotee and by no other way. So Srila Prabhupada is describing one who is always aware of the nature of the soul is never going to be bewildered in life. But bewilderment is a constant fabric even in a sadhaka's life. Then this goes to show that one is so one is slipping off from the position of self-understanding. And therefore Prabhupada is describing that to ensure this position of self-understanding, one should always depend on the Vaishnavas. Because by Vaishnava's mercy, Krishna is established in our hearts as an Krishna is established in our heart eternally, prominently. So the duty of a sadhaka is to always ensure that we are seeing things spiritually. Problems only occur when one shuts down the spiritual vision and starts seeing things materially. So we have to see things spiritually. And one of the easiest ways to ensure that, in line with what Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here, is malleability of the heart. When a sadhaka, when a devotee is ready to hear from the Vaishnavas and mold his life accordingly, then everything is going to be auspicious for the sadhaka. Because he's ready to hear, he's ready to mold himself accordingly. And therefore, Prabhupada is mentioning here that, okay, one who wants to remain at that level of the spiritual vision, he should just accept the statements of Bhagavad Gita apply in one's life. So malleability is built on the foundations of humility. And that a tendency to mold oneself. In that tendency, because you see, the moment we start deviating from the spiritual vision, Krishna may arrange help through the devotees. And if we can catch hold of that help and if we can recognize that help, our lives, spiritual journey is going to be very smooth. Very smooth. And no turbulence. Turbulence is experienced when our vision slips away from the spiritual plane, and therefore we start bringing in so many material calculations. O descendant of Bharata, he who dwells in the body can never be slain. Therefore, you did not grieve for any living entity. See, now the Lord concludes. The Lord now concludes a chapter of instruction on the immutable spirit soul. In describing the immortal soul in various ways, the Lord establishes the soul is immortal, body is temporary. Therefore, Arjuna as a Kshatriya should not abandon his duty out of fear that his grandfather and teacher, Bhishma and Drona, will die in the battle. On the authority of Shri Krishna, one has to believe that there is a soul different from material body, not that there is no such thing as soul, or that living symptoms develop at a certain stage of material maturity resulting from the interaction of chemicals. Though the soul is immortal, violence is not encouraged, but at the time of war it is not discouraged when there is an actual need for it. The need must be justified in terms of the sanction of the Lord and not capriciously. So therefore, the conclusion of this section, now we are seeing that, okay, always we should depend on the sanction of the Supreme Lord. So if in every situation we seek that, okay, which direction is the sanction of the Lord, then that direction is an auspicious direction. See, the nature of the material world is the material world changes our external settings. So if the setting is the same, then by inertia, one can, by inertia or by previous experience, it is easy to conclude which is the direction to go. Is it not? But the problem with material nature changes the external settings. Now in the new situation and the new setting, the previous instruction, the old instructions don't apply as it is because the situation has changed now. So when this happens, then that actually in general, that can potentially create a confusion and bewilderment in a devotee's life, because now the exact instructions which he had received before of how to drive, the situation is changed now. So that will not work. And therefore, in this junction, a sadhaka may tend to get bewildered and may tend to deviate and may tend to falter in one's steps. This only happens because the sadhaka forgot, to again connect back to the Supreme Lord, to the Shastras, to the devotees, to reascertain now which direction is the sanction of the Lord. And one who is always focused on this aspect, to always understand which is the sanction of the Lord, to always be in that guidance, such a person will never be bewildered by the external material changes, and such a person will not glide down to material consciousness. And in that way, one will be able to hold on to that spiritual consciousness, which is all uplifting and all auspicious. And that is why Arjuna is being encouraged to just follow in the according to the instructions of Krishna, and not worry about the external material situations. And that is going to make his life glorious. That is going to make everyone's life glorious. So let's stop here for today. Do we have any questions? Okay, so this completes the section on the immutable soul, or that section which is where the call for action is transcend to the spiritual plane. Don't work on the material plane. Material plane is always going to lead to explosions and implosions. It is the spiritual plane which can make one uh, glide through. This is the call for action in 11 to 30, which we can see. So we will proceed. So we will see further instructions of the Lord in our next class. Let's stop here for today. Transcend Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.